Superhumans of ECE. This is episode 6. I'm really excited for it. I want to thank everybody for taking this time, being in this space. I know there's a lot happening in the world right now. We don't need to talk about exact bits right now. Everybody's aware. I would just like to thank everyone for coming, really take a breath, get into this space. As everyone knows, this space is for me to connect with different professionals within children's services and children's developmental services, and really just share ideas with one another. If you want to know more about the project, you can check me out on YouTube or on Instagram. Both of them are Superhumans of ECE. So I'm going to start off by letting my guest introduce herself. I was actually just telling her I feel like I know her already, even though we connected through Instagram. So Anisha, go ahead, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Anisha Angela. So a little bit about myself. I am first and foremost a registered early childhood educator. I also am an author, soon to be author. My first book is going to be premiering really soon. As well as I am a childcare leader along with a professor. So I play a lot of roles, but I like to be very active in the field. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Awesome. I have to say, go ahead. No, go.
I'm also a specialist and a consultant. I keep forgetting the last part.
There's so many things to add, right? Which is really awesome. I'd like to say I'm really excited for your book. I feel like as a registered early childhood educator, I haven't seen that many books about allergies. I have to be honest. So I'm very excited about that. And that is premiering when?
In fall.
In the fall. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. I am going to obviously tag Anisha onto this, our interview, so you can definitely keep up to date with the work that she's doing. So we're going to dive right in, and usually I ask a certain typical questions, but given with everything going on, I really want to talk about the most recent video that you uploaded. And if you guys, people listening, have not checked it out, I would really encourage you to check it out. You can find it in Anisha's YouTube and as well as in her bio on Instagram. And you talk about the call. And what I love is that you provide the early year sector with a challenge in terms of Black Lives Matter and how we can incorporate that or how we can further develop that in terms of the early year sector. So I really love that there was a challenge included in it for professionals working in the earlier sector, because I think a lot of videos that I've come upon about, which haven't been too many with the earlier sector, I feel like they don't provide a challenge. What's the next step? So something that I really took away from it was moving past the dialogue. And something for me that I even fear with myself is, how do we move past that? Maybe when this momentum gets a little bit more quiet, how do we move past including that more in our earlier sector? And for my experience, when I've been in childcare centers, for the most part in the last few years, a lot of educators do have books that represent children with Black skin or children of color, or they have dolls that have that, but I'm not seeing it being utilized. So I feel like the first step is having those visual representations. But how do we as educators, as directors, as early interventionists, how do we, and of course, I'm not saying that you have all the answers or we all have all the answers, but just to kind of open that dialogue, right? How do we kind of keep that momentum going after all this? And how do we utilize that more within our centers or within whatever kind of work that we're doing in the earlier sector? So I just wanted to pick your brain, see what thoughts you had on that.
Great question. So definitely what led me to even start the video in general was obviously what's going on in the world. I think one of the main things that brought to me, of course, as a Black woman, I identify as a Black woman, was how I'm feeling and how that transpires to what I do every day. So basically, as an early childhood educator and a leader in the field, my first thought is the families that we interact with, the children that we interact with. And it brought me to the challenge because I'm realizing that it is a thing for us to take that step above and include resources and stuff like that, but how do we move past that? And yes, the first step is making sure those resources are there. So making sure that there are books that have many different types of children, diverse, especially in this particular situation, children of color and Black children. But what do we do when they pick up that book and have questions?
Mhm.
So it's back onto the teachers to make sure that they're ready to answer those questions. They're ready to be knowledgeable enough to share the truth, as well as making a safe space for children to ask those questions. So that's something I really, really emphasize in my video, is creating a safe space. So not just for Black children and identifying, but also for children that are non-Black or non-children of color, to have a safe space to ask those questions. Because a lot of them don't have that at home at all. They
Yeah,
don't
I
have
love
that
that you
where,
mentioned that in the video. I was like, that is so important. They don't. It's really our roles to be able to include that in their world if they don't have that at home.
right, right. So that was the main part of it, and so creating that safe space, and then opening the door to reminding early childhood educators that we have such a strong role in our field,
Mhm.
and it goes right along with what's going on in the world, and it's our responsibility to do our part. So that's basically the part there. We don't have all the answers. You definitely nailed it there. I don't have all the answers. I'm still asking questions.
Yeah.
Um, but we have the information and the resources to search for the answers,
Yeah.
so that we're able to be equipped to answer the questions that come our way, and be prepared for it. So I think that's just kind of the basis of what exactly I was trying to get through, and also to hold myself accountable. That was a big part for me as well. In my history in life, without getting too deep into it, of course, I have lived in spaces and have worked in spaces where I am the minority. I'm the only Black person, or Black woman in the facility, and it's my responsibility to not phase myself out as that person, but to bring knowledge onto those that I'm surrounded with. So that's where the accountability comes in as well,
Mhm.
for myself. And that's what led me to the second part of the video, which is creating that master resource list for educators, families, anybody that's looking to diversify their environments, providing them with just a quick list of all items that they can purchase, they can print, they can get, so they can get more information about things.
Awesome. I love that. And I honestly really want to thank you for that, because you did talk about that accountability piece as a Black woman. And I want to speak to that a little bit and really thank you for that, because I don't think that, in my perspective, that it's your responsibility. You don't have to do this for us just because you're Black, just because we're talking about anti racism, we're talking about the early years sector. You don't have to create a master list for us, but you are, because your voice is, of course, so valued. And we are really, of course, trying to amplify Black voices right now and their perspectives. But it's amazing to me what the Black community is willing to contribute for us to be able, and when I say for us, I mean people who are non-Black people of color, or people who are non-people of color at all. And I just really want to thank you for that, because I don't think it is your responsibility to do that for us. And I just find it amazing. So I do want to thank you for that. I am looking forward to that master list, and for even speaking to this topic, because I can only imagine how deep it goes in for you. So yeah, so we're gonna head off to our next question. So something that I've been asking additionally is, what has kind of changed with COVID-19 with your work, if anything has? And I'm sure it has, but what's kind of been happening with you now that it's COVID-19?
Hmm. Let's say my whole life just shut down completely. My whole life has shut down.
Good way to
A
put it.
lot of the a lot of the work that I do professionally, meaning the 9 to 5 section of my role, has to do with childcare. I am a senior area director for a corporate daycare. Daycares are shut down. Um, I am a professor. That hasn't quite shut down because I am teaching some online courses. So that's still going. There's just not the face-to-face factor.
Mhm.
And then I'm also a field advisor for another college that shut down because they
Yeah, no
stopped
one's going
going
to
to
placement.
no one's going to placement. So it really did shift a lot of things in my life professionally. One thing that it did do is give me the empowerment to do the other back projects that I had. So like my book wasn't necessarily on the back burner, but it was one of those things where it was like, I'm going to get to it. So it gave me the
Yeah.
time to be able to focus in on that project, as well as my self-employed life as a consultant and a specialist. So that's given me time to dig deeper into that and to, reach out to people like yourself and, connect more online and stuff like that. So there's the bad factor, but then there's the good factor as well.
Yeah, there's the pros and cons. I honestly feel the same way with COVID-19. Like, it really puts you out of your, like you said, that 9 to 5 kind of mindset or what you had. And I can only imagine for yourself because you have so many roles. And it really just kind of puts that a little bit on hold because now you're focusing on some of those things that you said that like you'll get to. I feel the exact same way. So there are definitely some pros to COVID-19. And I think it's, for me, it's really just opened my eyes to there's more than just the 9 to 5, and I'm
There
not
is.
to say it's bad, it works for people, I get it, but there's so much more to life
Yeah.
than that, right? So that, I think it's a great reminder. Awesome. So the next question I have is, what tools do you value most as a professional?
Hmm. So the tools that I value most, I wouldn't they're still tools, but they're not physical tools.
Hmm.
One thing I would say is balance.
Mm.
Creating a very good balance between, especially for someone like me that does a million things at once, balance is
I'm the same way.
balance is key, and understanding how important balance is an amazing tool for anybody that's kind of juggling a lot in their lives and realizing when it's time to stop, when
Yeah.
it's time to focus on another area, and when it's time to create a balance within yourself personally as well. So that's one, to just understanding the importance of balance. Self-care. Self-care, we hear that so many times
Yeah.
all over the place, but it is super helpful because I always say, especially to some of the teachers that I work with, some of the directors I work with, you can't give, in our field, we give. Everything we
Mhm.
do, we give.
I know we're here.
We give to our, our families, children, the community. That is our role. And you can't give on empty. You cannot give
Exactly.
on empty.
Yeah, your cup should
So,
be overflowing when you're
right,
giving. So that way it doesn't
exactly,
stop, it doesn't go lower, it stays full, right?
exactly, exactly. So that's that self-care factor that we really have to make sure that we're thinking about, is how can we refill so we can continue to give. So that's another aspect. And self-care can look like anything. For me,
Mhm.
it's getting a massage.
I
It's
miss massages.
me too.
Yeah. My massage therapist messaged me. She's like, I'm taking in clients. I'm like, oh, I don't know.
No,
Yet I need to, it's too much body
right.
typing.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. So something as simple as that, like massages, having Netflix time, reading a book, anything that speaks to you and your spirit and what makes you feel personally recharged,
Yeah.
those can be considered self-care. And it's important for us to have those aspects so that we can recharge.
Awesome. So that does, you did answer the next question, which is amazing. And I think something about self-care that I've talked to with professionals before is that it looks different for everybody. So if I or yourself feels like self-care is Netflix and massage or some ice cream, that doesn't mean it works for everybody else. Some people are like, other people are extroverts and introverts, or some people are a mix where sometimes self-care can look like connecting with one of your family members or your friends too. So keeping that in mind, that although self-care looks a certain way for someone, it doesn't look that way for other people. I really like that you mentioned balance because that's huge, and I think that's something I've been taught more with COVID-19 is balance, because we're home all the time but we're working from home.
Yeah.
We need to
Hmm.
find that balance, that professional boundary, that disconnect to be able to maintain our self-care. So I'm really glad you touched up on that. Okay, so my next question is, what are a few ways that you think, or what is one main way that you think that our profession can improve? And this can go as broad as the earlier sector, or if we're just focusing on childcare. I feel like this is a really loaded question every time I ask, because there's lots of
It
ways
is.
to further
My
improve.
gears are going.
Right. I would like to say that I feel like we've come a long way from what it looked like even a few years ago or a couple of years ago. But we have a lot to change.
Hmm.
And Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the first thing that pops in my mind, and it's something that I try to practice within myself, especially being in such a leadership role that I am,
Mhm.
is empowering teachers to look at themselves as professionals. As much as we think that they do,
Mhm.
and I'm speaking specifically to the teachers that are on the front lines teaching the children. There are times that there's situations that happen that don't make them feel that way. They feel as if they're looked at differently. So it's more so a challenge and a look at the people that are in leadership being the ones to ensure that their teachers are feeling like professionals.
Mhm.
They went to school for this. They went to school for this. They did so many hours of placement.
Yeah.
They've either had multiple jobs or they've had multiple. They have the skills
Yeah.
and need to be respected and looked at as professionals. And it's back on us as leaders,
Mhm.
people in management, to take a look at that and see if there's ways to empower teachers to think that way as well. Because once you think like that, you act like that, and you pursue and you um, have such a confidence about what you do that when challenges come your way, you're more eager to resolve them. Whether as if you see yourself in a different light, you kind of don't want to resolve any
Yeah,
issues
you're
because you don't feel
supported. Your self
confident.
confidence is increasing. How would you
Right.
say as a leader that you install that into your practice?
Um, Sometimes it's just the little things. Sometimes it's just the little things. In my daily 9 to 5, let's use the perspective of being in senior management. When I go to locations and I go into classrooms to say hi to teachers, acknowledging the work that they've done in their classrooms.
Mhm.
Sit down for a circle time that they're doing and join in and applaud them for the work that they do. One
Yeah.
thing that I do, and all the time, my at my locations, they always know I'm looking at program plans. I'm always looking at program plans and passing by. And if you see that teacher that's taking the extra step in the approach, just acknowledge them
Mhm.
and show the appreciation for their work. Another thing I would say is I'm a huge person on professional development and continuous education. So making it a standard that we have to continue our learning through workshops and webinars and stuff like that as well, and putting that together as a necessity to keep them in their professional light.
Mhm.
But those are some of the things I do. But the main thing is just the appreciation. And
Yeah.
when they're doing something right, let them know you're doing it right and you're doing an amazing job. So just those little things.
That's awesome because people do really grow when they're appreciated. And I remember when I was
Sure.
practicing ECE, that those are the places that I would grow the most. When I knew that people who were in leadership positions, my directors, my supervisors, they valued my work. And just what you said, that little bit of an acknowledgement can go such a long way, and they'll just want to continue to improve. Right. So I really love that you touched upon that. And I think a lot of um, this platform has started from that is for professionals to really feel like professionals, to feel like superhumans of this work, not only ECEs, but other professionals within the early years sector, because I strongly believe that we're pretty undervalued if we're looking at the grand scheme of professions in the world. So I love that you touched upon that. So I really like that. That's kind of my takeaway for, I think, ECEs and even for other people who are in leadership positions to really acknowledge the people who are within their team and to take that time. So my next little bit is I have asked you to share a picture with us. So I'm going to ask you to describe this picture and why you chose it.
So the picture, so I had a couple in mind. The picture that stood out to me that I wanted to use was my first early childhood experience. So I have a picture of me with a group of children, and you can just see the excitement in my face.
I love those pictures.
And I like to use that because that specific experience is what led me to who I am today.
Mhm.
To have the confidence to jump into management roles, to speak and be an advocate for children, and just enjoy the field. I would say that that is that experience that I had that really shaped who I am as a professional today. So that was my choice for choosing that one because I think it's a good representation. I worked in many rooms, of
Mhm.
course, but the preschool area was kind of my favorite, and that's
There's
where
always one that
um,
resonates with you best,
it
right?
is. It's between toddler and preschool, but
Hmm.
with preschool, of course, the education, yes, you're teaching all throughout, but with preschool, you're getting them prepped to go on to school. So I found that that was a little bit more, I don't want to say significant, but that was a little bit more, something more for me, getting them prepared for school. And the reason why I like this picture as well is majority of the children, I still have connections with the parents. So they all follow me on social media. We live in the same, I live in the same area that the center is. So I bump into them, I see them, and I'm so excited to see them. And they're like, oh my God, who's this woman? I don't know who she is. And I'm like, oh my God, I changed your diapers. Like, oh my God.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. I love that there's still that connection, right? And you're still in that area. That's amazing. I can't wait to see that picture. So our last little bit is, what is your takeaway with our whole conversation that you would like whoever's listening to really reflect on and to really act upon?
I think if anything, it would be to self-reflect, take this time of COVID to self-reflect on your next steps as a professional. It doesn't necessarily have to be next steps into like a different position, but how are you going to come back after this if you're not already back? Of course, I know a lot of people are in the emergency childcare centers now, but how are you going to come back from this, and what is that going to look like? I would say that that would be the takeaway, because that's something I'm thinking about as well, is in the situation and time that I'm in, I'm having ample time to do a little bit more. I'm hoping to come back as a better professional in this field, and I really urge others to kind of think of that way as well. We're all, you know, home, we're doing things as well, and a lot of people are going to the professional education route. We're coming back with more tools. So just taking that time to self-reflect on what that looks like for you moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to thank you for sharing that and sharing everything else and your time with us. I really appreciate it. So for our listeners, you can find the raw footage of this on my YouTube page, as well as on Instagram. Again, that's Superhumans of ECE. And I will make sure to include Anisha's information as well. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.